Have you ever stopped and thought about how we went from a world with zero photographs to a world with, I don't know, billions of them on our phones alone? Today, we're going to jump back in time and explore the incredible chain of innovations that made taking a simple picture even possible. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of how it happened, let's just take a second to think about the why. How did this one invention totally reshape the way we see the world? Because, it's so much more than just snapshots. It's about memory, it's about truth, and it's about art.
To really get the scale of this, you have to try and imagine a world without photos. Seriously, before the mid-1800s, if you wanted an image of anything, a person, a place, a big event, someone had to sit down and draw it or paint it by hand. That was it. Art was literally the only way to record visual reality.
So we're going to trace this amazing story through 5 key stages. We'll start with the earliest concepts, then move to capturing that very first image, making it reproducible, getting it into everyone's hands, and finally, seeing how it turned into art. Okay, let's dive right in. The very first hurdle wasn't even about making a photo permanent. Nope, the problem was much more basic. How do you even project an image from the real world onto a surface in the first place? Well, the solution, it turns out, was ancient. It was a principle called the Camera Obscura, which literally just means dark chamber. And this wasn't some new idea. Scholars had known about this thing since way back in the 10th century.
And the concept is just beautifully simple. Light from the outside streams through a tiny little hole into a dark room or a box, and bam, it projects an inverted, upside-down image on the opposite wall. Great minds like Leonardo Da Vinci actually used this as a drawing tool to trace hyper-realistic scenes.
But here's the catch. That projected image was like a ghost. It was there 1 second, and then it was gone the next. So the next monumental challenge was figuring out a way to capture it, to make it stick. And that brings us to our next section.
A French inventor named Joseph Niepce is the one who finally cracked the code. But his first attempt? Wow, it required an exposure time that is almost impossible to imagine today. It took 8 hours. And this is it, the world's very first photograph. It's known as a heliograph. And yeah, it's a blurry view from his window, but it's fixed onto a plate. So here's the takeaway. We finally have a permanent image. But at 8 hours in exposure, it was a proof of concept, not a practical tool. You couldn't exactly ask someone to sit still for that long. After Niepce's death, his partner, Louis Daguerre, he kind of picked up the torch and dramatically improved the process. By 1837, he perfected a brand new method that was about to take the world by storm, the Daguerreotype. And this was a huge leap forward. The images were incredibly sharp and detailed, made on a polished silver plate. But there were some pretty big problems. The process was incredibly dangerous. They used heated mercury vapor. And it had a fatal flaw. If you wanted this to get big, you could only make 1 copy. Each image was a one-of-a-kind.
That whole reproducibility problem was a massive barrier. If you wanted another picture, you had to take another picture. So, this brings us to the next great leap, the invention that really unlocked photography's true potential, the power of the copy.
So on the left, you see a sharp, metallic daguerreotype. On the right, something new, something a little softer. See, while Daguerre was working in France, an English inventor, William Henry Fox Talbot, was coming at this from a completely different direction. Instead of making a single positive image on metal, Talbot figured out how to create a negative image on paper. And from that one negative, he could print unlimited positive copies. This was the game changer. The revolution wasn't just capturing an image, it was the ability to reproduce it over and over again.
So now we have copies. Awesome. But photography was still a complex science. It was for experts who understood chemistry and could deal with all this cumbersome equipment. The next problem was, how do you make it accessible to everyone?
Well, 2 key breakthroughs in the 1880s made it happen. First, a new stable chemical mixture, a gelatin emulsion, was developed. And second, they put this new emulsion not on heavy glass plates, but on flexible rolls of film. All of a sudden, photography was becoming portable.
An entrepreneur named George Eastman saw the massive opportunity all these innovations were creating. He founded a company you might have heard of, Kodak, and in 1888, he introduced a simple box camera with what might be the most brilliant slogan in business history.
But it wasn't just the camera that was revolutionary. It was the business model. It was genius. The camera came preloaded with 100 pictures. When you were done, you didn't touch a single chemical. You just mailed the entire camera back to Kodak. They sent you back your prints and a reloaded camera. For the very first time, anyone could be a photographer. With photography now in the hands of the masses, it really started to transform. It wasn't just for recording facts anymore. It was becoming a whole new way of seeing the world.
This led to a movement called Pictorialism, and it was all about photographers starting to ask, hey, what if the camera isn't just a machine for recording facts? What if it's a tool for creating art? So they started manipulating their images to be more expressive and, painterly. And this just illustrates the idea perfectly. This is The Hand of Man by Alfred Stieglitz. It is not just a record of a train in a rail yard. I mean, look at the smoke, the light, the composition. It's a moody, atmospheric work of art. Photography had come full circle, becoming the very thing it first tried to replace, art.
Which leaves us with a final thought. Photography began as this quest to capture a perfect, objective copy of reality. But in our age of filters, AI, and social media, what is its purpose now? Is it to record truth, or is it to create our own? That's something to think about the next time you open your camera app.